Oh, good day, family. One more. Oh, I think that's it. Good day, family. We're going to get started early tonight. I know, good day, and thank you. Gratitude. I am Face the Nation, and we are on Bolden Unchained. We're here to read. And we're going to read. I'm finna get right into reading. Yep, I somewhat apologize a little bit about earlier today because I had a lot to say. A whole lot to say. But tomorrow we'll resume with Powernomics. But today I just was on one. But we are reading Tears We Cannot Stop by Michael Eric Dyson. And this is a sermon to white America. We all know I'm Face the Nation. We all know we're on Bolden Unchained. We know why we're here. We know why we're here. Let's get to the copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. And that takes care of that. And we just gonna go ahead and get to reading and stuff. We are reading Michael Eric Dyson, Tears We Cannot Stop, a sermon to white America. And a lot of us, I've just recently became familiar with him not too long ago myself, a little bit, but he's a wonderful, great, respectful man. He's a minister, and that's him right there. He's an honest man. I appreciate his book. We reading it, and as we doing other books. We're here to assist Black America, see what's wrong with us. How can we fix this? Let me see, where are we? We are in the chapter, I think we're still in the chapter nigger. And how it affects white people. This entire book is to white America. It's his criticism to white America about their actions, their anti-blackness, their supposed fragility, how they supposedly seem so fragile. So let's just start reading where we are. We were reading, I think this is chapter 4, maybe. There was it too. Yeah, chapter 4. Beloved, white folks, we know the word finds greater currency and menace in white circles than you are willing to say the word nigger. The ban on its use by white people is an attempt to arrest its murderous spread. The white folk who claim that the call to stop using the word nigger is to cave into political correctness, ignore history and Black humanity. The white folk who claim that the call to stop using the word is to cave into political correctness, ignore history and Black humanity. They are the kind of white people who pose as honest. We have, most of us anyway, rejected your imagining and defaming us as nigger. We have done everything humanly possible to prove that we are not who you say we are. I am from a generation far more willing to make the effort than the one freshly on the scene. Black millennials have little use for respectability politics. They see no need to prove their humanity before you treat them with decency. They discern the fatal lapse in your logic. Why should Black folk ever have to prove our humanity to white folk who enslaved and raped us, castrated us, and murdered us for kicks? Your white humanity is forever at stake with such young folk. And you know what, beloved? And see, our brother, he is a minister also. Although in his criticism, his chastisement, his calling out white American stuff, he's still affectionate. And, likewise, he is with them. I imagine this is how he how he see white folks and stuff. I don't think he just put that in the book just to call them beloved. just to be calling him that. That's probably his, the way he talks and stuff, I guess. I don't know. I know if it were me, I wouldn't be saying beloved. I'm reading it because it's in the book. But yeah, but I digress though. White people, I like to say white people too. So we know who he talking to. White people, your white humanity is forever at stake with such young folk. And you know what, beloved? They have a point. Black folks my age and older have a direct memory of what it means for white folks to be blind and deaf to us. Even when we stood by the thousands in the streets and screamed our names for the world to hear. I am a man, we blared through a bullhorn, amplifying both our desperate desire to be recognized and our unknowing sexism. While pleading that the world not be blind to us, we couldn't see the women by our side. I am somebody, I insisted. We insisted. Even when it was more aspiration than belief. All of that was our way of saying, in reality, our way of preparing to proclaim that Black lives matter. Beloved, white folks, there is something Black folk fear, whether you can see it or not, whether some of us Black folks will say it or not. Our fear is that you believe, that you insist, finally, tragically, without hesitation, with violent repercussions in tow, that in all sorts of ways, we are still your nigga. That's our fear, that white folks believe. Our fear is that you believe that in all sorts of ways, we are still your nigga. But when you get away, you break away in life and in afterlife, what's that going to look like when that resonates with white folks? It is a belief that you hold on to all these centuries later, white folks. It is a belief that has survived all of the marches and bullhorns and protests and politeness and good behavior and forgiveness and kumbaya and nice Negro smiles. It has survived. It has survived our dancing to a song playing nowhere except in our heads. It is a song that we hope would quiet your insistence that we disappear or die. It is a belief that has survived all of our trying to make you see that most of us will never do you any harm. And you've shown a brutal consistency through the centuries by not hesitating to kill a nigger on sight. White folks, it's painful, very painful, when Black folks have so easily, sometimes unknowingly, perhaps invisibly, bought into the logic of the nigger and let it rule our minds. I saw this in my own family. When I got into Cranbrook, a prestigious prep school outside of Detroit in Bloomfield Hills, one of the wealthiest suburbs in America, my parents and I took a tour of the school's progress geography. As a white student guided us around campus, we weathered a light drizzle and came upon a puddle. The white kids stepped around it, and I stepped right through it since it wasn't deep. See, Ivory, the white boy is a genius, and Michael ain't, my father said to my mother, thinking I hadn't heard him, or perhaps he didn't care whether I heard him or not. A great grief engulfed me. It was at that instant that I completely, unforgettably understood what Baldwin meant when he wrote of his own father that he was defeated long before he died, because at the bottom of his heart, he really believed what white people said about him. I felt the same about my father. He was a barely literate man who likely had to drop out of school in Georgia in the 8th grade. He was a man whose industry and muscles got him work in a factory. He was proud of my desire to get more education, yet he lived in a prison of disbelief in his own worth. Therefore, he doubted mine too, that he could believe that a white kid was smarter than me because he stepped over a puddle, proved how little he believed in Black intelligence and how much he bought the lie of white superiority. I flashed back to when I was 8 years old, and I mimicked his pronunciation of the number 4. He pronounced it foe, F-O-E. I followed suit, but he stopped me in my tracks. Don't you go to school, boy? He asked me. Yes, I replied. Don't you know how to say that right? Yes. Then do that from now on. That's why you go to school. I could feel his self-doubt mingle with his deep desire for his son to do better than he had. But at Cranbrook, that day his self-doubt led him to take refuge in caustic judgment. He projected his limitations onto me, even as he wanted me to have more opportunity. This is the racial catch-22 that too many of us face. This is what whiteness does to the black mind. I saw what being thought of as a nigger did to my father. I also see what it does to millions of my people who struggle every day to be recognized as human beings. But I'm different, right? You may think you know me, that I'm a middle-aged man with a PhD, a minister, a public intellectual, a media personality, that I am an exception to your idea of blackness. I'm burdened and privileged by this idea of me, your idea of me. It is a fiction that traffics in long-held beliefs about race. My privilege rests on the idea that I am special, that I am different, that I'm not like them. That difference is partly why I get to address you directly, beloved. Why I am considered more capable of speaking to the problem of race, more articulate than regular folks. But I am not this fiction. I am like every other Black American, a person caught between two perceptions, a Jekyll and Hyde of race. Dr. Jekyll is the professor that many of my people and many of you love. Mr. Hyde is the Black man who grew up on the streets of Detroit, who needs do little more than return home to see a fate that could have become my fate in the face of my brother Everett, locked behind bars for more than a quarter century now. Everett and I are two Black Americans. I am Black America, the way white America tells us it could see blackness, if only we were all respectable, successful, prominent, institutionally afflicted. My brother is the way America does see blackness. Suspect merely for existing, naturally violent, obviously criminal, rightly sentenced, thankfully incarcerated. He is my brother, and we are two sides of a family coin, a coin that is both biological and national. I don't for a moment buy the false how you say it? Dichotomy. Dichotony. Dictomy. I'll look it up. Get chat to tell me how to say it. Yeah. I didn't for a moment buy the false dichotomy yet between us. We are both tied together in a seam of racial destiny as the nigger. I am reminded of this almost daily as I get letters and emails from hateful white folk. Choice examples include, you and that worthless piece of shit in the White House have brought back and given new meaning to the word nigger. You dickhead Dyson, you really are a fucking nigger. Or, I'm a spirit chucking, blue gum stepping and fetching Uncle Tom Field nigger. Get your ass out there and pick some cotton while your mammy cooks some chitlins. Your books are shit just like you. I don't doubt that even some legitimate critics feel that way. An especially sensitive writer weighed in on the belief that whites will always beat niggers down because they are Black savages. Another fan opened, OPINDD. You've been an educated man. I have always felt that you were the worst kind of nigger. Asshole, smooth talking bastard though you may be. Another writer could barely stand to pen anything in the body of the email. The subject line said it all. Shut the fuck up, nigger. Yet another said, you define the word nigger. One pen pal said, you are nothing more than a hate-filled nigger that was given your position due to the politically correct morons that believe you can give self-respect to those that have no idea how to earn it. Another, these were white folks saying to him, this to white folks, this about white people. Shit. Another white person told me that hip-hop is just like niggas talking shit to a scratched up record. Okay, I have to admit that description does fit a few rappers. Beloved, this is just the tip of the iceberg of hate. This is why I can never pretend that I'm in any way better than the masses of black folk. I know that no matter how much education I've got, how well I behave, how much compassion I show to white folks, how well heeled I am in polite company, no matter how articulate I am still just a nigger to so many white folks. And it's not just the lunatic fringe that swells with bigots. I'm afraid that angry white folk who consider themselves part of the white mainstream have just as much venom and ire. When I used to appear on Fox News pretty regularly with Bill O'Reilly, I begged him to say on air to his sizable audience that even though he disagreed with me, they shouldn't send hate mail. They shouldn't send me hate mail and call me nigger. He never made that plea. His silence reinforced the racial social contract forged by angry whiteness. And yet, we have the ability to shatter that social contract. And you must stop believing that you can't understand us, when in fact, you choose not to understand us. White folks, you must stop seeing us as monolithic and therefore fundamentally, irrevocably different from you when we are singular and exceptional in all ways, just like you. Our troubles will only cease when you stop believing what you know is untrue. That we are always poor despite our home buying drive that makes you flee to the suburbs. When you stop believing that we are radical when we can be more conservative than you, that we are one color when we are a plethora of shades, and that we are related to each other and not you when you are related to us in more ways than you can count or may care to know. White folks, we are finally not your nigger. Not in the best world we can create together. Like it or not, Black humanity has been and continues to be the only salvation white American humanity has. Democracy might well be a wounded bird incapable of flight without the poultice of Black forgiveness pressed to its wings. When we confront racial catastrophe, Black folk insist on fighting back. We have given this country the spiritual will and the moral maturity it lost in the bitter divorce of principle and practice. Our nation can only reach its best destiny when that recognition grounds our shared culture and existence. We want what you want. We want to pursue our dreams without the hindrance of racism. We want to raise our children in safety and send them to good schools, send them to good schools. We want our communities to overflow with opportunity and support. We want good jobs and health care. We want gorgeous parks and lovely homes. We want affordable markets and department stores nearby. And we don't want to die at the hands of either cops or other Black folks. Oh, my ancestors, we are on chapter 5. I'm going to keep going. Our worst enemy, beloved. Why is it that every time Black folk talk about how poorly the cops treat us, you say that we should focus instead on how we slaughter each other in the streets every day? Isn't that like asking the person who tells you that they're suffering from cancer to focus instead on their diabetes? Your racial bedside manner has always been fairly atrocious. But we are not fooled. You do not bring this up because you're genuinely concerned. You want to win points in debates. You want to avoid any responsibility for how traumatized our communities are. I got to read that again. You want to avoid any responsibility for how traumatized our communities are, white folks. Ain't that why we're here? That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. I've been telling y'all, I think I know. Can't nobody tell me. But if I find somebody another reason why we so traumatized, we don't even know it. We don't even know it. And here it is, my brother just said it. My confirmation. It's confirmation. You want to hide from the horror of cops mowing us down like animals. So you hurl that accusation at us like religion. But there's no righteousness in your retort, no healing in your hubris. We are dying. It is a serious matter, and you must lay down your smug self-satisfaction that we are our own worst enemies and face how you are killing us. And this ain't even The traumatizing, it's deeper than what my brother bringing up. It goes very deep to the white meat, all of that. Every last bit of it. Just this once, set aside your litany of accusations and listen, white folks. Just this once, take the side of the true victims of oppression. Just this once, please don't side with the manufacturers and perpetrators of our death. I'll be honest and admit, there are ways that Black folk are doing ourselves in. But I hope you can admit that even those ways are often linked to our gutless embrace of the bigotries you spew. Do you think we like being killed by folk who look like us? Do you think it doesn't bother us? Our bullets are often aimed at each other because we're too near the site of pain and heartbreak, frustration and depression. We often lack food and shelter, and we live in homes overrun with bodies, leaving us little room or rest. So we lash out at them, or at an acquaintance, or a partner in crime. Yes, it is true. Sometimes we send them, or perhaps a stranger nearby, to their eternal reward. This is the geography of despair. It is also the pain of never having control, of always being afraid, of struggling to care for and love what we cannot protect. I learned this lesson in a perilous way. Give me your money, the tall, slender Black man demanded of my fiance and me. We were near the corner of a Detroit ghetto street, not far from where the 67 riots were sparked a decade earlier. It was cruelly ironic that we were close to the entrance to a Detroit police mini station. We were walking home at 10:30 p.m. one Saturday night after a late choir rehearsal at church. Our sailor had come out of nowhere. He announced himself ominously with a .357 Magnum revolver at the end of his shaking hand. Terror washed over us. This was the Detroit of the 1970s, the city that had been dubbed the murder capital of the world. It was also a city in transition. America's manufacturing strength had showed the first inkling of bowing to a thriving service economy. All those well-paying factory jobs that had been an elevator to the Black middle class would slowly begin to disappear. Coleman Young became the city's first Black mayor in 1974. He won in large measure by promising to reform a brutal police force. Most white folks scampered to the suburbs after the riots in 1967. That left Black folk in charge of shrinking resources and facing the rise of drug gangs and a spiking crime rate. I feared that night becoming one of its casualties. Sir, we don't have any money, I said. I literally have $1.35 to my name. The man had on a pair of dark sunglasses. I couldn't see his eyes to gauge his demeanor. All I knew is that I didn't want my fiancée and I'd have died that night. She was scared, speechless. I feared that any sudden movement might cause him to shoot and kill us. The spirit urged me to talk to him. We just come from church. Why not call on faith to see us through? Man, you don't look like the type of brother that would be doing something like this, I offered. Praying it stuck a chord of humanity and at least racial intimacy. Thank God it did. I wouldn't be doing this, man, he said, his voice trembling, his body language suggesting a growing regret about his action. But I got a wife and 3 kids. We ain't got nothing to eat. It would be another year before my son was born into poverty, and I'd know the desperation a father faces when he can't provide for his own child. Both his mother and I would be unemployed by the time he arrived. I'd have to stand in the WIC line to collect free food offerings. But for now, I was focused on getting to that future. Then our would-be robber delivered a real shock. He revealed the vicious cycle of carnage that makes some people victims and then pushes them to make others its victims as well. Besides, last week somebody did the same thing to me that I'm doing to you. I tell you what, I said, we just came from choir rehearsal. And if you'll let me reach into my back pocket, I can give you my church bulletin. It has a number you can call to get some help. He took the bulletin and briefly glanced at it. He looked stumped. Perhaps half in disbelief at my desperation, perhaps half believing that I really wanted to help him. I made my final offer. Look, I only have $1.35, but I want to give it to you. No, man, You need that yourself. I insist, take it, please. He told us we could go free and to walk to the end of the block. I froze. I didn't want him to shoot us in the back. I asked him to get on his knees. I don't quite know why I asked or why he complied, but miraculously he did. I said a brief prayer for him. I didn't want to test the Lord's mercy or the man's patience. He stayed on his knees as we walked away unharmed. Beloved, I know what you're thinking. You're not considering how social deprivation leads desperate people to act desperately. You're not thinking of how communities bereft of hope and resource claim as its victims the people who seek to escape its fatal grip. White folks, you're not thinking of how many of you were spared such a fate because of God's grace and white privilege. Many of you are thinking that black folks kill each other every day without saying a mumbling word. Then we loudly protest a few white cops who kill black thugs. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani tried to ambush me with that "it's the black, not the cops" claim on Meet the Press. It was right before the decision was made not to bring charges against white cop Darren Wilson, who had killed unarmed black youth Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. I find it very disappointing that you're not discussing the fact that 93% of blacks in America are killed by other blacks, Giuliani said. We're talking about the exception here. The notion that we are indifferent to murders by other blacks is nonsense. But we also know that if Jamal or Willie kill somebody and they caught, they going to jail. Cops are rarely held accountable for their slaughter of black people. Neither Jamal nor Willie pledged to protect and serve the community. Neither of them has been issued a badge and a gun to represent the state. The police have a higher standard to meet, a greater obligation to be cautious in using lethal force. Black folk do protest to each other, to a world that largely refuses to listen, the killing of blacks by other blacks. We cry out against what goes on in the black communities across this nation. We think it is horrid. We know such communities are vexed by problems faced by all neighborhoods that are depleted of dollars and hopes. These communities are emptied of good schools. They are deprived of the social and economic buffers that keep Beverly Hills from turning into Beirut. People usually murder where they nest. They aim their rage at easy targets. Beloved, white folks, what you see happening among us is not best understood as black on black crime. Rather, it is neighbor to neighbor carnage. If our neighbors were white, they'd be victims of the same crime that plagues black folk. You are right, however, about those proportions. 93% of black folk who are killed by other black folk. But 84% of white folk who are killed by other white folk. It's not necessary to modify the noun murder with the adjective black. It happens in the white world too. Where's the white on white crime rhetoric? Where are the rants against white folk ruining white culture with their murderous ways? One truth should be clear. If you want interracial killing, you have to have interracial communities. Wasn't that one of Martin Luther King Jr.'s dreams? To live in a nation where black and white folk could be victims of crime in integrated neighborhoods. Then he argued that thieves should pay more attention to the content of our Cadillacs than their color. Perhaps I am misremembering. White folk commit the bulk of the crimes in our nation. And beloved, it might surprise you that white folk commit the most violent crimes too. According to FBI statistics, black folk committed 36% of violent crime in 2015, while white folks committed 42% of violent crimes in the same year. White folk consistently led all other groups in aggravated assault, larceny, illegal weapons, possession, arson, and vandalism, and most likely bestiality. And white folk are far more likely to target the vulnerable too. White folk lead the way in forcible rape. You are also more likely to kill children, the elderly, significant others, family members, and even yourself. White folk commit a majority of gang-related murders too. A majority of the homicide victims in this country are white. White folks are 6 times as likely to be murdered by a white person as they are to be taken out by a black thug. The white on white mayhem is profound, yet no one speaks of it in racial terms. That's because the phrase white on white crime doesn't serve a larger ideological purpose. White on white crime does not jive with the exclusive focus on a black on black narrative that conservatives and liberals too have bought into. The success of that narrative depends on a few things. You had to construct the ghetto as a space of savagery that was unique to black folk. Never mind the fact that its first occupants were the Irish, the Poles, the Italians, and especially the Jews. Then you had to say that any right-thinking folk wouldn't kill each other. But there is no inherent blackness to the crime that occurs in black communities. Take blackness out of the equation, and you'd have social engineers and Ivy League professors trying to fix crime-infested communities. We know this because big brains and social reformers from the late 1800s well into the 1930s successfully addressed crime waves set in motion and endured by poor European immigrants. Keep blackness in place, and you have social engineers and Ivy League professors blasting the intrinsic pathology and inherent depravity of black life. These experts will conclude that our families and neighborhoods produce the seeds of their own destruction. The 1965 Moynihan Report on the Negro Family, a report by Harvard professor and Johnson administration official Daniel Patrick Moynihan, had warned that a castrating black matriarchy and a tangle of pathology threatening the black family is a famous example. Beloved, you don't even stop there. You feel compelled to make crime merely a matter of ethical collapse. White folks, you don't mention the systemic removal of goods and services that drive some folks to crime, nor do you talk much of black folk lacking the social supports that other ethnic groups enjoy. White folk, there is hardly any mention of the failure of the markets that are supposedly neutral, but which in fact favor those who aren't black or poor. Beloved, let's try a brief thought experiment. White folks, let's apply the logic of some of your arguments about black folks to you. Take your argument that we should pay more attention to black on black crime than white cops killing black folks because more blacks are killed by other blacks. Now let's compare the number of white Americans killed by white folks to the number of Americans killed by terrorist acts. I can already feel your hair standing on end, your neck getting red. Oh yeah, you're breathing, trying to breathe through your little bitty tiny square nose. Oh yeah, I can see it now. Your face red as a beet. I digress though. You see how hurtful it is to make such a comparison. You see how I could miss the point of giving each cause of suffering its due. According to your logic, we should not be concerned with political acts of terror committed on American soil because since 9/11, less than 100 people have been killed in such attacks in America, while 11,208 people were killed by firearms in 2013 alone. And 21,175 people died by suicide with a firearm. By Giuliano's logic, then, the obsession with terror is both misplaced and hypocritical. We should focus instead on the plague of firearms on the American population. Far more white folk kill each other than are killed by terrorists. So let's stop worrying about terrorism and worry about white on white homicide. Stop griping about a couple of planes crashing into a couple of towers. White folks, stop crying over a few folk getting butchered by a few religious fanatics when the routine crime that snuffs white life out, it lies in a white man's assault rifle. Notice how just reading those words makes your blood boil. See how your nationalist bravado flashes? White folks, can you imagine how your rage might spill over if that was said to you with the same callous disregard for white life that Giuliano speaks when he dismisses cops killing unarmed black folk? See how your temperature rises by just reading those words? These are words that are rarely spoken directly to white America. Very rarely. Words that reflect back to you your dishonesty and indifference and tone deafness to our plight. I think it was Giuliano some years ago. When he the one that said in New York, black folk were running into bullets, that cops wasn't really shooting at black folk just running into bullets. Just tell us anything. Just tell us anything. It ain't even got to make sense no more. Beloved, I must admit that there are ways that black folk do aim hate at each other. Ways we do rip each other apart. A lot of it has to do with how we've taken into our minds and souls the poisonous bigotry you've spread. Because of white folks. It's brutal and agonizing to watch, especially because we are imitating the hate for blackness for others that you taught us. But you seem hardly aware of this sort of black on black crime. Could it be that you really don't care about black on black crime unless you can use its existence to attack us even more? But there's some value to you in our folly. You can point to it and say, see, black folk are just as bad as us. They're even more destructive and hateful to each other than whites have ever been. See, just as the song in the Broadway play, Avenue Q says, we're all a little bit racist. Of course, that's a horrible misuse of the term. Better to say we're all just a little bigoted. Yes, or prejudiced for certain. But I'm afraid you got to own racism all by yourself, beloved. That's y'all's. It signals the power not only to hate, but to make that hate into law and into conviction, habit, and a moral duty. Thank God brave Americans challenge the legal and ethical roots of racism in this country. Because y'all white folks, y'all motherfucking ass would have carried it on forever and ever and ever. Y'all motherfucking ass, you can't be goddamn it trusted. Yeah. You even find comfort in exploiting black prejudices against darker black folk, against women, against queer folk, against poor folk. You feel good about it because it lets you off the hook as well. It's as if you take glee in thinking black people are equally bigoted. Yeah, like it's okay. Well, everyone else is feeling the same way. I don't feel so bad. Look at them, the bigoted asses, just like we taught them. Yeah, that's how they are. Black America, wake y'all asses up. Shit. Especially when you hear one of us tell our dark-skinned children not to marry a dark-skinned mate so they won't have dark children. And I tell y'all, we here to have black babies. White folk don't want that. Or when you hear one of us say that only light-skinned people have good hair. Or that there was no homosexuality in Africa and that it's a white man's play. We are here to have black babies. We're here to heal our people. We have sometimes been faithful proxies of white supremacy. If you take the time to know us, white people, you'd see that we've imported some of the harmful beliefs you've laid on our psyches, or we've generated our own varieties of troubling blackness. In fact, your racist dogma was so appealing that even when you stopped barking it, we demanded more in our own cultural quarters. The ventriloquist effect of whiteness has worked brilliantly. Black mouths moving, white ideas flowing. What your vast and curiosity about black life keeps you from knowing, and this is heartbreaking to admit, is that we black folk often see ourselves the same way you see us. Sometimes we view our own culture, our traits and habits, through the distorted lens of white condescension or white hatred, which yeah. Often we make other vulnerable black folk in our midst the nigger you made us all out to be. This came home to me after I battled bias at Carson Newman. The racial dynamics of the college were troubling. Black students couldn't have been more than 6% of the student body. We weren't warmly welcome either, except if we played ball. Ain't that some shit? When I asked why there weren't more black speakers at the mandatory Tuesday chapel, it came down to crude mathematics. Our small percentages mandated only one black speaker a year. Most of the other black students accepted that as par for the course. I was a few years older, so it rankled me a little bit. I didn't enlist their help. I formed a one-man quiet protest and refused to attend chapel. In return for my resistance, chapel was mandatory. I was unceremoniously booted from the school after my junior year. Then I had to figure out what to do to support my family. I had worked all through college, cleaning and degreasing heavy machinery at the local factory. Later, I pastored a couple of different churches. After getting my walking papers from Carson Newman, I got called to a bigger black church in East Tennessee. I went there thinking that I had found my life's purpose. After being expelled from college, I was eager to apply my knowledge of the Bible and my beliefs about social justice in the black church setting. The only thing I really discovered is that God has a mighty sense of humor. The church I took charge of is named Thankful Baptist Church. They proved anything but grateful for me. I decided I'd challenge the black church's sexism. He said they proved anything but grateful for me. I decided that I'd challenge the black church's sexism. It was another show of our moral hypocrisy, another way of looking down the ladder at the face and fate of the nigger beneath us. The sad irony of our sexism is that it targets the women who make up the vast majority of our congregations. Of course, I wasn't foolish. I knew that I'd have to teach for at least a year to get the church ready to ordain 3 women as deacons for the first time in its history. In weekly Bible study, I hammered away at the parallels between sexism and racism. If God respected all people the same, then we had no right to deny women equal standing in our sanctuaries. All seemed well until a group of local ministers got wind of what I was doing and deemed it destructive to black Christianity. You gonna let this yellow nigga come down here and destroy the black church? Their leader asked members of my congregation. Y'all gotta do something. So they did. When I got to church one Sunday morning, my key didn't work. Must be fixing the door finally, I thought. I went to the key to my office didn't work either. Finally, I thought, they are getting around to refurbishing my sparse quarters. I preached my sermon and couldn't help but notice faces I hadn't seen before. I thought my preaching was winning new converts. Apparently, God wasn't one of them. After church, a deacon rose to announce trouble. Pastor, there's a real problem in this church. Deacon, let's deal with that trouble. The problem is you. Oh, damn, I'm the trouble. Praise the Lord and passing the offering plate because this wasn't looking too pretty for me. And the church erupted in applause and then in short order took a vote to cast me out. It really hurt that most of the women in the church sided with their men against me and their own best interests. But I eventually understood they had to live with those men long after I left. Mm-hmm. Yeah, them black folk, they had already decided. All they need to know was who gonna tell it. Who gonna tell it? And when he preached that sermon, they were waiting till he got done. They was waiting, honey, to let him know. He said, boy, but I digress, y'all. I thought I had heard the Lord clearly when I got kicked out of school. I thought I'd become a church pastor and preach the prophetic word of God. I thought I'd lead the people into the vineyards of progressive theology, and together we'd be a mighty witness to the black church, for the black church, challenging all of the ills of society. I thought first we'd uproot the ills in our own ranks, but mine was the only uprooting. I was sent packing with a month's severance pay. Once again, I was left with no means to support a wife and a preschooler. They was wrong for that. I had little choice but to return to Carson Newman and the bastion of whiteness from which I had been expelled to complete my education. I knew my return meant that I had to attend chapel regularly. But after my experience at Thankful Baptist, it seemed a harmless requirement. I had obviously heard God wrong. The black people just like, we just want to know who gonna tell him, who gonna let him know. As soon as he finished his sermon, And then they went and ate. They ate good that Sunday. Shit. It wasn't just gender that proved to be a barrier, a real source of suffering for Black folk, not only in my church, but across the nation. The shade of skin was a problem too. The minister who led the charge against me was, like me, a yellow Negro. And by citing my color in his theological brief against me, he shined a light on the deep wound of colorism in Black America. The light, bright, and damn near white Black person is often put into conflict with the darker and richer chocolate members of our community. I have been set up close. I had seen up close how color-struck Black folks really are. My father was a hulking man, known for his brown and his blue-black skin. As I grew into adolescence and my understanding of white gaze deepened, I saw how you looked at him. I couldn't help but notice how so many folk saw my father not as a man, but as a specimen. A hominid whose dark skin and outsized muscles conjured all the ruinous images of Black folk fresh out of the jungle. Savages who woke at dawn to go to work to fuel the engines of your civilization. Savages without whom you could not turn the gears of the very world you demanded Black bodies make for you. After he was laid off from the factory, my father worked as a janitor and all-around utility man at a local pharmacy. I saw how the white owner of the store eyed him. The man valued my father's epic strength, but at the same time, he infantilized my father. I even heard him once say to my father that he acted like a boy. I half expected my father to lay him in his tracks and prayed he wouldn't do so. Yet I was angry that he hadn't done so to preserve his sense of dignity and his manhood. This same Black man who was so tough on us kids didn't say a word, not to that white man. Sure didn't, honey. And that's how we is today. That's how you is today. Yeah, you so quick to get on us. You ain't gonna say nothing to white America. And I'm gonna cuss both of y'all asses out. I'll cuss both of y'all motherfucking asses out. Yet I was angry that he hadn't done so to preserve his sense of dignity and manhood. The same Black man was so tough on his kids, didn't say a word. It gave me a hint of the psychic cost of Black manhood, of thrusting and purring with the cold facts of white dominance that hushed one's rage and yet encouraged it to flow against one's own family. I suspect that my father's suppressed rage found an outlet when he encouraged his sons to box each other with gloves on but no headgear, to the point that we blooded each other's noses in our ghetto basement. This was a poor Black man's therapy. At age 7, on our family trip south, I imagined what the word nigger might make my father do. At age 15, I saw in the pharmacy what it did to him. The word didn't just exist in the air to be brushed away like a gnat because he knew better. It resided in him. It resided in all of us. We Black folk also viewed his dark skin with cruel disregard. He was the nigger, not just to you, but to us too, because we have learned to see through your eyes. See, we got to see through a different set of eyes, y'all. We got to look through our eyes, Black eyes. We got to look through our spiritual eyes, our mind's eyes. Look through your ancestors' eyes. We looking through white folks' eyes at us. That shit ain't right. I saw what seeing himself through your eyes did to him. It ate at him. It circled his mind and frisked him like an abusive cop. I saw that he had chosen my golden-skinned mother. He called her Ivory, at least in part as an escape from the prison of his own darkness. In Black life, light skin is valued because it is closer to your white skin, and those with it are deemed to be closer to your so-called civilizing influence. Yeah, so-called. That's the biggest pretense. That very notion reeks of barbarism. It reeks of a crude, primeval equivalence between epidermis and humanity. It reeks, therefore, of white supremacy. White folks. Sometimes my father beat us something awful. It was ritual and tradition, of course, in so many of our communities. He got beat, and therefore he beat. It had long since passed into rite and folklore, long since have been an artifact of the agonizing anthropology of complicated black domestic habits. It had now become part of the art of punishment and control, in part to keep us from being slaughtered in the white world. The logic is as simple as it is brutal. I will beat my kids so white folks won't kill them. That's some black on black harm you never seem to take credit for. That's some abuse rising from fear you never seem to take notice of, even a little responsibility for. White folks, you ever consider this, beloved? White folks, you ever have to apply the cane or stick or switch or belt to your kid's backside for that reason? You certainly took the high road when it came to football player Adrian Peterson brutally switching his son, but you have no idea of the history of corporal punishment among black folk and some of the reasons it exists. Do you see how this might enrage us against you even more? We are angry that fear leads us. We are angry that fear leads us to hurt our kids. We are angry that even after beating our kids, sometimes with sadistic regard for your criminally intense need to monitor us, you still manage to find ways to kill the flesh of disciplined black people. White folk created the world where black whipping was necessary. White folks also created the world where black parental punishment is seen as savage. Our disciplinary practices are used to argue our questionable moral and mental health. Some of that may even be true, but white folk hardly ever want to admit that they have had a hand in all of this. You never assume the responsibility for making it so. When my father beat me, I wondered if he was really flailing at himself and an idealized self that was reflected in my lighter body, but always beyond his reach. Nigger didn't just happen to us, it happened in us. Your continued acting on it and our internalization of it destroys us both, as it did my younger brother. Named after our father, Everett, a nutmeg brown was a couple of shades lighter than him, but among the darkest of us boys. He adored our father. He loved whatever daddy loved and wanted to do whatever daddy did. My father loved cars, and when Everett was young, he built and raced go-karts. Competitive and bright by nature, he not only built the best go-karts, he brought them to victory more than once, more often than not. Once he was old enough, he traded go-karts for real cars, and you could see him side by side with my father, under a raised hood on a hot summer day, hands covered in motor oil, a rag hanging from the pocket of his faded blue denim overalls. When Daddy died in 1981, none of us was ready. It deeply affected all of us, but Everett was the one who was broken by it. With our father gone, he seemed to lose his grounding. Like me, he had always been thoughtful and reflective, but where I read books, he read the streets. We both saw the corruption and injustice of the system we lived in, but while I sought to overcome it, he sought to beat it at its own corrupt game. He sold drugs. He thought he could outsmart the system, but in 1989, at the age of 27, he was tried and convicted, I believe wrongly, for murder, and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. He has lived behind prison walls ever since. I cannot blame his imprisonment on skin color, but I can say that how he was treated before he got locked up put him in a prison of sorts too. Like our father, his dark skin marked him for special treatment of the kind no one wants. When we were young, like so many dark-skinned boys, he was often predesignated. He was often predesignated as the troublemaker. He didn't finish high school and got his diploma a few years later in prison. The bad nigger. It was assumed that he'd be more violent, more likely to do wrong, most likely to catch a case and commit an act of crime. If enough people, white and black, treat you like the nigger for long enough, you can start to see yourself that way. His life, like our father's, was lived in reaction to that word. I saw too the favor, and sometimes subtle, sometimes glaring, that my yellow skin got me. I saw how the teachers warmed up to me while spurning darker children. I saw how foreboding racial mythologies haunted the classroom, stalked the social settings where black folk live. The teachers didn't give some of the darker kids the nod like they gave me. The darker kids didn't get the benefit of the doubt of being smart. I saw how it ruined many a Negro. I saw how many dark-skinned kids weren't encouraged in the larger society to believe that they had the skills they assumed I possessed just by glowing in the skin I had. I also felt the resentment projected onto my light skin, a resentment of light privilege. It cuts both ways for sure, but too many yellow Negroes deny light privilege the way many of you deny white privilege. We are as blind to our perks as you are to yours. Since I had a very dark father, I was forced to confront the ugly disputes over color that are often silently waged in our communities. But too many light folk just don't admit that we all know that to be the case. And I'm not speaking of light guilt or color stroke version of white guilt. I mean owning up to the benefits and advantages of being light-skinned. We make up the same reasons why we should be spared reckoning with shade and tone as you give for not addressing whiteness and privilege. Our being color struck isn't the only sign that we've imitated whiteness. We've also emulated and adopted your coarse reactions to class and sexual identity. Many of us have joined the unfortunate assault on gay folk. We see them as a moral poison, or more politely, we fought them for failing to cast aside a sinful lifestyle. Many black folk use the Bible to thunder down judgment on gay or lesbian folk. We trot out some of the same arguments that were used against black folk by white preachers. That God frowns on their sexual identity, that the Bible says their habits and desires lead right to hell, that their moral corruption is a blight on the community. We black folk have often said, just as you have, that we love the sinner but hate the sin. That questionable formulation proves to be even more ridiculous when applied to queer folk, whose sexual identity mingles them out for judgment. For those of us who oppose gay marriage, our hypocrisy screams even more loudly. Although we deny it, the same kind of people who oppose interracial marriage oppose same-sex marriage too. And they are often armed with the same sorts of arguments. Black folk have blindly followed a path of prejudice that either earlier ended with us as victims. Black folk have blindly followed a path of prejudice that earlier ended with us as victims. Many of us find the abandonment of queer black folk a special breed of hypocrisy, failing for the most part to find a suitable social scapegoat for our distress. We realize there is no bottom rung that is not already occupied by another black person, and therefore we make new niggas of them. If, as Toni Morrison says, it is on the backs of blacks that America has been built, then surely blacks have built other forms of blackness, acceptable blackness, by offering nigger status to those we deem beneath us. As surely as fringe black figures like right-wing ideologue Reverend Jesse Peterson see the black poor as niggers, some religious blacks see queer folk the same way. We can't seem to shake our hypocrisy and thus end up mimicking the whiteness we claim to despise, acting just like white folks. That's why we got to change our entire mentality. We can't keep it like it is. This gonna be the last one right here. Let me see here. I think I could go on, but I feel a little sleepy. But we're gonna go on. Yeah, we're gonna do this. At least another 10 minutes, maybe 15. The use of nigger has been eerily consistent in the culture, especially with the presidency of Barack Obama stoking resurgent white panic and the emergence of Donald Trump, amplifying white paranoia and racial belligerence. But black folk haven't stood by passively. A great many of us have tried to rob the word of its essential viciousness by reappropriating it, though to many black folk, the effort smacks of internalized racist self-hate. They feel the effort is futile and tips our caps too eagerly to a word that should be banished from the culture. A nigger is a nigger, or a nigga, they say. You got the hard R, nigger or nigga. Beloved, many of you don't understand why black folk ambushed the word nigger and made something strangely beautiful of it. What's more, you often appear upset that we appropriate this term while denying you the pleasure of helping us to reshape its use. We strictly forbid you the privilege of participating in our fierce disputes about the word. As for the attempt to make the word palatable in our arenas, you don't have to know a lot of social theory to know that powerless people often fight power with their words. Black people have been lying in wait to murder nigger from the start, except for those who seek to become the nigger you feared in their rebellious or wayward existence. But that is something to explore another time. We quietly fumed at the way the word caricatures our humanity. For a long time, we couldn't make you stop using it, so we gave it a go ourselves. Jay-Z explains in one of his songs the mechanics of how the word went from nigger to nigger. Jay warned on the song Ignorant Shit that artists often use exaggeration to make their meaning clear. He boasts we shoot niggas straight through the ER. That is, he hopped off the at the end of nigger by placing it with a GA gut to make it nigga. Thus, an offensive word became to many black folk an affectionate one. Nigger is the white man's invention. The gender is deliberate there. Since this was a white male creation, even as white women shared the culture of derision too, nigger is the black man's response, since black men were most easily seen as nigger. But black women bore an even greater burden with a double portion of the slander when they were called nigger bitch. Nigger taps into how darkness is linked to hate. Nigger reflects self-love and a chosen identity. Nigger does far more than challenge the white imagination. Nigger also captures class and spatial tensions in Black America. Nigger is grounded in the ghetto. It frowns on bougie ideas, and spits in the face of respectability politics. That's why an incident in the last year of Barack Obama's presidency resonated so widely. That's why an incident in the last year of Barack Obama's presidency resonated so widely. Yo, Barry, you did it, my nigga. Larry Wilmore fired a rhetorical shot across the bow of whiteness with these words at the 2016 White House Correspondents' Dinner. The nightly show comic made an appearance before the group to tell jokes following President Obama's final stand-up routine. Referring to the president by his youthful nickname was one thing, but referring to him with a vernacular offshoot of nigger was something altogether different. Letting that be his last word about Obama at a gathering the world paid attention to was beyond the pale. The fallout in Black America was swift and heated. Black social media was a Twitter with Wilmore's comments supporting or lambasting him with equal passion. Black journalists and civil rights leaders chastised Wilmore for breaking black code and saying nigger in mixed company. They believed that Wilmore should have observed the informal rule that you don't say that word around white folk. But that rule was from before rap albums gave the term currency far beyond the hood. Wilmore's black critics reprimanded him for his poor choice of words and for insulting the most powerful man in the world. They also blasted him for disrespecting the black journalists in attendance. Others saw the debacle from both sides. Obama was unfazed by Wilmore's utterance. The smile on the president's face said that he enjoyed this spontaneous moment of racial intimacy. Obama returned Wilmore's peace out, double fist pump to the chest, and embraced him after his performance. You know. On the surface, the Wilmore controversy appeared to be little more than a skirmish between black elites over the use of politically incorrect language. In truth, we got a glimpse of something far older, far bigger, and far more intense, the fierce battle to define black identity, indeed blackness itself, that has raged in black quarters since black folks set foot in the New World. The word nigger captures that tension. Nigger often sounds organic and sensual in the mouths of black folk. Its meaning is shaped by the circumstance in which it's said. It is a term that works best when spiced with humor and slang. It is a greeting. What's up, nigga? It's a direct object now. You my nigga if you don't get no bigger. It is meant to emphasize or celebrate the setup. Hey man, I just got into Harvard. The celebration is nigga. It is an imperative suggested by a change in tone. Hey bro, my doctor just called and said I got to get some blood work. The speaker is urged to comply with the doctor's wish in a responding voice that slightly stretches the first syllable. Nigga. It was laughter. These girls never give me any play, and I drive a Mercedes, as in Mercy D's payments killing me. I know. The humorous response with hand over mouth, nigga, is a sign of approval. My nigga is a sign of disapproval, said sternly with squinting eyes. Nigga, it is an expression of disbelief, spiked with a smirk. Nigga, please. It expresses self-hate, much like nigger does, with a scalding, scolding tone. Niggas. And it signifies a love for one's folk, even as one acknowledges their flaws, largely in a lighthearted vein. These niggas. If more of you understood that nigger is a word apart from nigger, and if you understood how the different spelling and pronunciation and the race of the user changes its meaning, then some of you might not insist that you should be able to say it too, because y'all don't know shit. But I digress. Beloved, feel free to admit it. Most of y'all thought that black folks were saying nigger. You thought that you had been banned from using it because it was a horrible word, only to discover to your surprise that black folk were saying it too, which meant that it was once again safe to say. But many of y'all felt disappointed. White folk, you felt it was your duty to admonish black people that they should know better, since the word supports the bigotry of some whites. Too many white people believe that it is easier to warn black folks not to use the word nigger to tone down their lyrics and eliminate a troubling word than it is to keep white folk from using a racist epithet that still echoes in white quarters. Some of you may even feel a bit of anger since you had done so much to keep your family and friends from using the word. You think it is hard to tell white people not to use the word when black folks simply won't stop using the word. My friends, white privilege screams in many of these reactions. The fact that too many white folk don't know the difference between nigger and nigger is more than a lack of curiosity. It is the refusal to learn about black life and black culture. Of course, it cannot be denied that some black folk also think there's no difference between nigger and nigger. And even though that's true, the stakes are different. Many whites draw equivalence between the terms as a way to establish fair rules about what blacks and whites should be able to say to each other. Many of y'all believe that the ban is universal and means nobody should use the word. Many black people agree with y'all. Their aim is largely pragmatic. They want to keep white folk from believing they have a right to say the word in public. If the best way to do that is to keep black folk from saying it too, then so be it. That history sets some black folks' teeth on edge. They think the term's mutation to nigger offers scant relief from the hateful charm of nigger. They think that many of y'all won't be smart enough to tell the difference between the two. This may be where black conflict merges with white privilege. I refuse, and I hope you do too, to turn white Americans into infants. Other members of your communities know, or they can easily learn, that there's a difference in the two terms. It is reasonable to say that younger white people who hear the relentless thump of nigger on their favorite rap tunes are ignorant of the history of violence against black folk that nigger suggests. Is it reasonable? Is it possible that those same black artists are poor historians too? That may be true. Yet those same kids, indeed those same artists, can't be let off the hook for refusing, as my father used to say, to get their lesson. We don't excuse young people their ignorance of American history. I don't. We teach them even as we chide their bluster and their pride in not knowing. I had to testify in the 1990s before a state legislature about the effects of rap music on our nation's youth. I had to answer in part the claim that a white boy had been encouraged to use the N word, and it said the N word, because he heard it in his favorite music. I asked the legislators, rhetorically, if that same boy who had been introduced perhaps to the B word, too, which is repeated arguably as much as the N word in rap music, had refrained from using the term around or against his mother. I supposed out loud that he had no doubt learned how and when and with whom to use the epithet, and even one of its offshoots like biatch or biatch. Thus, he learned not to use the B word in certain contexts and should understand that he cannot use the N word either. The same is true for other white boys. Even as they hear the word nigger constantly looped, they should know better than to abscond with the privileges of blackness tucked into their oversized clothing. I'm sure you realize the hypocrisy of urging folk to be responsible and yet making excuses for white America. White folks, you may have heard some black folk argue that using nigger is a sign of black self-hate. That is black folk denying their own history, denying their own savvy, their own ability to code switch and to make distinctions between words and the histories they should carry, and the histories those words carry. There are many signs of black self-hate to combat, but using nigger isn't one of them. Martin Luther King Jr., the greatest black man ever, and arguably the greatest American too, used nigger. The night before he was murdered, King had a pillow fight with his lieutenant Andrew Young and his closest friend Ralph Abernathy. King and his compatriots often let off steam with such antics as they confronted the heart of American darkness. During the pillow fight, King playfully reprimanded Young, asking, "Little nigga, where you been?" It is not that King is beyond the possibility of self-hate. A compelling argument for that resides in his little-known yet tragic disdain for dark-skinned black women. But self-hate certainly could not be ascribed to King for humorously using nigger as he was about to sacrifice his life for black freedom. Beloved, white folks, you got to face the fact that accusing black folk of perpetrating the legacy of inequality by using nigger is a vicious ruse. It is yet another way of refusing to accept responsibility, of wanting everyone else but white folks to practice the accountability you preach. All of this is a calculation to avoid a bigger issue, and that is how black folk are after all of our efforts to be accepted as fully American, still seen as the other. We made it to chapter 6. Thank you, ancestors. My eyes are so red. They burning. It's so straight. Yes, we made it. Tomorrow night we will start on chapter 6, Coptopia. Ooh, beloved white folk. Some of you seem genuinely surprised that most black folk fear the police. You are sometimes shocked that we think of them as a brutalizing force. You cringe when we say they are out to do everything but serve and protect us. White folk, you think we are manufacturing stories about our bad encounters with police. Y'all think that we must have done something wrong to provoke such remorseless cruelty. And yet, we have exhausted ourselves telling y'all how they mistreat us so routinely that it is accepted as the way things are and will always be. We're going to start that tomorrow night. Yep. I thank y'all for being here. I thank you for your presence and your patience. Because, yeah, I thank Mother Earth. And, yeah, I'm stuttering and stuff. My eyes is tired. I'm sleepy and stuff. Yeah. And Mother Earth and Mother Gaia, honey, they going to work out there and stuff. It might be affecting you too. Just roll with it. Just go with the flow and stuff. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep elevating. Keep working on your projects. You know, your creations that you're working on. Keep working on them and stuff, honey, because I already done told us Mount Shasta is resonating with the carbonic energies. And our core is copper and carbon and selenium. And Mount Shasta is running, it's activating from that. So it's pulling. It's pulling on us, I guess. I don't know. It's just us, though. It's us, though. It's our energy. We are carbon. And yeah, you know, I'm feeling this stuff. I'm going to have to, find me where my spiritual teacher at. Shit, I'm just saying. But yeah, it's us, y'all. This is a perfect time to be alive. This that's going on, it ain't for nothing. I'm just saying. But I love y'all and thank you so much for being here. Hi, Eclipse Apple. Yes. I type. I don't use auto writing. If you're deaf, stay deaf. Don't use all media entity. I don't know what's whoa. Hey, Cow Dog. It's so good to see you, my brother Kelvin. It's so good to see you. Oh, tomato, citrus, and pork chops tonight. Yeah, okay. Yeah, copyright disclaimer gonna be done with soon. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. But until it is, I guess I'll do it and stuff because I don't want to infringe on nobody. I truly don't. But I don't see how I can. I'm reading the book as it is. And so I might add a word here or there. I try not to take no word. I might stumble and stutter over a word. But yeah, I'll go ahead and read it until they be like, yeah, we ain't got to read that no more and stuff. Yeah, but I love y'all. I thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next page. Keep you some gratitude. Process this too. We process everything. And at nighttime, during the daytime, when we're reading stuff, we just process everything and stuff. You got to process whatever you're going through in the day anyway, your experiences, your thoughts, what's happening, things that's coming your way. You got to process the day's goings on anyway. So, and this right here is no different. We got to process all of this and stuff because we got so much to unlearn and relearn. Yeah, we don't want to just take up space. It's a lot. And we don't want to just take up space with it and stuff. So I love you. I love you to life and afterlife. And I'll see you on the next page.